Hi, everybody. Welcome to the June 2024 SJAA meeting and imaging meeting. And today, Rich Klein has put together a panel of folks who photographed the eclipse or experienced the eclipse, and they're going to talk about it. We have a lot of people talking. If people keep their comments under 5 minutes, then maybe we can have a question, but otherwise, you're going to have to hold questions to the end. So without further ado, Rich.
Hi, everybody. This is Rich Klein, and I want to thank all the participants. First of all, great content, just amazing stuff. I continue to be amazed by the technical capability of the SJAA members. And in addition to that, we got a lot of slice of life content also, just about the whole experience of traveling somewhere and going to see a total eclipse, which is obviously one of nature's great phenomena. So let me share the content. And to be clear, I'll be showing all of the visual content and be asking you to mute and unmute yourselves as I call on you. Okay, so I think you should now be seeing a full screen of my presentation. Hi, was that correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So San Jose Astronomical Association at the Great Eclipse of 2024. This has been the most viewed eclipse in history. Having gone across all of North America, it's been estimated that close to 200 million people saw some part of it. About 14 of us did, or 14 of us will prevent. And as you know, in ancient times, people believed that an event like an eclipse was a bad thing, a bad omen, that the sun or the moon disappearing was a harbinger of disaster or devastation or destruction. Fortunately, we don't think so. We didn't think so. And so at least 14 of us spread out across 5 states or provinces and 3 countries, ranging from California to Mexico, Texas, Arkansas, Illinois, and Ontario. And these people are going to share their experiences. We're going to go basically from west to east. So we're going to go first in California, where there was a partial eclipse, and then go down to Mexico and then head up northeast. Our strongest contingent was from Texas, from where there were, I believe, 7 of us. Okay, so no further ado. Number 1 is Jolynn. If you're on, please unmute yourself and talk to your first slide and tell me when to switch.
Yeah, all right, thanks, Rich. All right, so hi, everyone, I'm Joe, and I think I'm the only person here who did not see the total eclipse, and that's because I've got a family with 2 kids, so it's a little hard to kind of get in the zone of totality. But I did have a ton of fun here in San Jose. In particular, what I really did that I think was unique was I used a Daystar Quark, which is a filter that goes into a telescope, and it filters out all of the light except a very thin band around the HA line. And it allows you to see a ton more detail on the sun that you wouldn't be able to see if you just had a regular white light filter. So you can see like solar prominences, which kind of look like little rings that come out of the edge of the sun. You can see the detail on the surface of the sun itself. It's a really cool way to view the sun, and it makes it really fun to look at the sun any time of the year, even when there isn't an eclipse. It's kind of like the view of the sun that you would see like in movies or sci-fi, just like bustling with activity, tons of detail. I wouldn't recommend using a Daystar Quark to look at a total eclipse, because you wouldn't be able to see the corona of the sun. You would just see like tiny little prominences along the edge of the sun, but none of that that bright white light extensions that go far out of the sun. So this is really just something to look at for like a partial eclipse, or for just the sun on a normal day. So it made it worthwhile. I could just set it up at home, San Jose, in the backyard. I'll mention a few things about my setup. One is I stopped down a 50mm refractor down to about f6.7, making it smaller because a higher focal length, the higher focal ratio makes it easier to see more of the detail through the Daystar quark, and that's just the way the quark works. I used a Takahashi EM200 mount, and what I did was I did about 240 video recordings over a 2-hour period. So about, one recording every 30 seconds or so. Each recording was about 6 seconds of footage. Each recording was about 30 seconds of footage. And then I did kind of the standard planetary processing method where you pull out the best frames, you kind of align them, and then kind of stack them, and then that created a 6-second long time lapse of the entire partial eclipse, but using the Daystar quark. So some things that worked really well. Number one, Daystar quark performed super. I loved the amount of detail you could see through the filter. But some challenges, and this is just a function of having many different kinds of things hooked together, like USB sometimes was disconnecting on and off. And then I'd have to quickly intervene and try to get everything reconnected before the next time-lapse footage would kick off. Some challenges with stabilizing the footage and post-processing. I used a whole suite of tools for stabilizing and for processing, for stacking, for sharpening, stabilizing. It was a patchwork of different things from different vendors. And maybe, do we want to go to the slide to show the video?
Yeah. You want me to click the video or talk?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Very cool, Joe.
Yeah, it's because it's, I think, 240 frames over 6 seconds. It's super smooth. I can probably send out the link on. I have a link to it on YouTube. You'll be able to see it there in super smooth motion. I'll mention a few more things about the setup on the left. So there's a Takahashi EM200 mount. The primary refractor for imaging is below, and then above there's a guide scope with a white light filter in front of the guide scope. I use a software called Lucil Guide, which is a pretty old software, but it still worked. I was still able to guide the sun for the whole 2 hours. I did the polar alignment the previous night, so 2 hours of guiding, 240 video recordings, and it generated a ton of video files. I think it was something like 300, 400 gigs of video files. So I had to make sure my hard drive and everything was cleaned, really clean, really empty, and it ran miraculously really well. Using Firecapture is the software I use for running the recordings. They have like a timer mode where you just say like, hey, I want to do one every 30 seconds and give it a short little pause and kick off the next one.
Okay, so Joe, it's been 5 minutes. You think you can wrap up quickly?
Yeah, so I think I just want to share that doing daytime astrophotography with the sun is a lot of fun. The sun changes all the time, and it's comfortable to set up during the day. It's warm. You're not fighting the elements, and I happen to have a lot more time and energy during the day, so I get to do this with the Daystar.
Okay, thank you, Joe. We're going to move on to Mexico. So here's the map overall. We're going to dive down to Mexico, and Dave Swenson. Take it away, Dave.
All right, thank you, Rich. Yeah, my name's Dave Swenson, and this was my third eclipse. And with each eclipse, I've gotten more and more technical and more automated. I had good luck in Oregon, at Madras, that you see behind me, in 2017. Wanted to go down to Chile in Patagonia to see the 2020 eclipse, but some stupid pandemic happened that canceled all of that. And so pretty shortly after that, heard of an RV caravan that was being organized to go down to Mexico on the center line where, skies are beautiful and conditions are right, and watch the eclipse there. So signed up in 2020. It was a grueling trip. It was almost 4,000 miles, about almost a month-long trip, traveling with, if you hate driving behind an RV, imagine driving behind 19 RVs, but a lot of good memories. The eclipse, we had high cirrus clouds, and overall things went well. There were a few issues, but the equipment I was using was just a DSLR and the R6 Mark II. Mirrorless cameras are amazing in terms of the burst rate and how many frames you can pack in per second. So highly recommend that. I bought a 200 to 800 millimeter RF zoom lens and kept it at around 637 millimeters f9. I had been using Thousand Oaks filters, but found out that the Spectrum telescope glass, or any glass filter, I think is going to get you crisper shots. Things don't bleed as much through the filter. All of this writing on a Pegasus Strainwave or harmonic drive mount, and I actually had two cameras on that mount, and one of them was being automated by Eclipse Orchestrator. The second one was what I used in Oregon, Solar Eclipse Maestro. Both worked fine. I had a hard time finding a 2014 Mac for the Solar Eclipse Maestro. But overall, the automation was amazing. Worked quite well. I'm very happy with the filter. We had clear enough skies, but some of the lessons I learned to avoid. I had 5 cameras running during the eclipse. Jen, I think you're not on mute now. Or Joe? Joe, you need to mute, or somebody needs to mute. Thank you. But I had 5 cameras going, GoPro and wider cameras and the video camera. I was down south. I'm an astrophotographer. I tried to take advantage of the clear skies the night before and needed to do polar alignment as well. But tried to do too much that night in terms of imaging. I actually had removed the meridian limits on the mount so it wouldn't do a flip. And that caused me major issues. So at 3 in the morning, I actually had to wake up and do another polar alignment. The biggest issue was wind. We had 45-mile-an-hour gusts. Just, it would be dead calm and then just horrific winds and knocking things over. We had a dog knock over one of my video cameras, and we had a physicist who was trying to use a Celestron C14 to replicate Einstein's experiment relatively light. And because of the winds and the gusts, it was just moving his big sail of a telescope too much.
Joe, we should probably get to some of your great images. So right now.
I'm happy with what I got. This is the diamond rings before and after, and a nice prominence on the after there. Next. And this is a GIF. You can kind of see it moving, but this is a stack of about, I think, 59 images taken at, 1/1600, 1/3200, and 1/6400. So kind of getting, this is what, again, the automation produces, and it was timed quite nicely to get the prominences, the chromosphere, and then the Bailey's beads. Next. And I'm happy with this. This is obviously the corona. And if you can kind of faintly see some of the moon, the relief, the coloring of the moon there. This was processed primarily in Photoshop, I think solely in Photoshop, using Nico Carter of Nebula Photos. Has a great tutorial where you do a radial blur and image subtraction, and it really brings out more of the definition of the corona. And then I like putting things together like this to kind of show all of these images. Obviously, there's not a GIF there, but this is now hanging in my living room.
It's beautiful stuff, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to move right on to Philip.
Hi there. My brother and I drove 4 days to Latham Springs, Texas, a Baptist church resort to experience the April 8th eclipse, located right in the center line of the eclipse path. We had purchased tickets for this event through an ad in the Sky and Telescope back in the fall of 2023. our intention was originally, as I mentioned, was to pull our trailer there, but all the campsites were taking. So Lathrop Springs provided hotel accommodations, 3 full cafeteria meals a day, vendor spaces, a large meeting church hall for program presenters. The event was organized by the Texas Star Party Group, best known for their dark sky star parties. Driving there, we were pretty apprehensive about due to the forecast of thunderstorms for April 8th. There were 90 star parties located over a half a mile away in on an observing field at the resort, but we elected not to attend those due to the predicted clouds and chances of rain during the course of the week. Go ahead and set the second slide under. Okay, so you can see the much of the area in the hotel was under construction. You can see the front entryway where the Texas Star Party greeted everybody. And in the slide to the left, you can see the first telescope we used on the far right-hand side was a lead 4-inch SET with a 1,000 oaks optical filter, celestron equatorial mount with a right ascension drive and declination. Unfortunately, the belt on the declination broke, so we had a tough time with the declination making corrections since we didn't do a polar alignment except on the day where we just kind of guesstimated. We used it for observing with 15, 20, 26 millimeter inch and quarter eyepieces. The instrument to the right is a Takahashi 4-inch FS102 refractor. And it's on top of an Ioptron Easy Mount Pro go-to mount, and that's a tri-pier tripod. And we also use a 1,000 oaks optical filter, although there's not a glass filter. It's one of those. I guess they no longer offer those. This instrument basically performed flawlessly throughout the entire event, and we used 2-inch eyepieces on there from 26 to 32 to 38 millimeters. We also use 7x50 binoculars and regular Eclipse glasses. Go ahead and next slide, please. As in Masters in 2017, photography was somewhat of an afterthought. We're not astrophotographers, so I didn't want to go through the gyration of swapping eyepiece adapters and everything else during the eclipse. So we did our shots the crude way, like people in star parties often will do to your scopes, which is using a smartphone through the eyepiece. The photo on the top left is right after first contact. I think it was through the Meade, taken with my camera phone. And this is shortly after, like I said, first contact. The total eclipse shot was taken with a smartphone. Since it was done on the fly, no attempt was made to bracket the image, and it's a little overexposed, but we caught the corona pretty well. The actual visual views were stunning. Prominences surrounding the entire sun, especially that big one that you can see with the naked eye. And the photo to the left is taken with a mirrorless camera. I think it's a Sony NEX3. And it gives you a pretty good idea of what totality looked like. One thing we did notice, the sky wasn't as dark as Madras. I don't know if anybody else had the same thought. But in conclusion, all in all, we really enjoyed this. This is my second, my brother's third total eclipse. And we enjoyed the hospitalities, the seminars, the talks, the meetings from people all over the world. And that made this an unforgettable event. And plus the clouds lifted on the day of totality. So we're pretty happy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a little bit, that top left photo, that's from a cell phone shooting through an eyepiece?
Yes.
That's really good. That's really good. I've never had much success at that.
Yeah, the eyepieces we use, I guess they have pretty good, it depends on the eye relief. If you have some that they're really finicky, it is really tough. But the ones we used were fairly easy to center the eyepiece, or even the totality was one of many that I actually started snapping off. But I wish I had the opportunity to bracket the exposures, but in the middle of totality, I just wanted to enjoy the experience.
Got it. Okay, well, thank you, Philip. Next up is Stephen Green, which is to say me, because he has a priority interrupt in the form of a new family member coming up. So Stephen was just outside of Fredericksburg, which is west of Austin in the Texas Hill Country. Very nice place. at the Planetary Society Eclipse-orama featuring Bill Nye. And this was a gathering with over 800 people by reservation only at Lodge at Country Inn Cottages, 200 acres. He, however, stayed in San Antonio because they were charging approximately $1,000 a night for the stay with a 3-day minimum. Crazy. There were food vendors all over the place and appeared to have been a real party. And the food was very good. Bill Nye was the attraction. He was busy from sun up to sundown, talking with people, interviewing and mingling with attendees. Stephen had a great time. He wishes the weather could have been a little bit better. So his equipment was another Canon DSLR with a 600 millimeter lens, a Thousand Oaks polymer solar filter. Apparently, polymer does rather Thousand Oaks stopped making glass filters. The Skywatcher heliofinder was the mount, and it worked very well once it got it pointed at the sun. Upon initialization, it was guiding towards the sun, but he had to do it manually. And once zeroed in, it was fine, rock solid. And the challenges were the clouds that many people in Texas had, and they had to shoot around. So looking at the images, there's first contact. The second one's a 6-second exposure of the corona through clouds. One thing I've noticed through a lot of the images from Texas, you got the corona, and then there are some clouds in the vicinity of the sun which are kind of lit up, which sort of, in my opinion, it sort of enhances the effect artistically. And then there was a very short exposure to enhance the chromosphere and particularly the big prominences that everyone saw. So that is Stephen Green. I wish he were here to take questions, but he's not. So we will move on to Joe, Klein, Texas. Unmute yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. So actually, I wasn't in Klein, but close by. I was in a little town called Copperas Cove, which is about 12 miles west of Klein.
Okay.
And me and my wife left on April 1st in our RV and drove 6 days. We took our time a little bit, but the intent was to get there the day before at our spot. Like other people have mentioned, we were a little concerned about the weather forecast. There was a group text set up among a bunch of people from the San Jose area, and I was reading about people abandoning original plans and heading into Arkansas and elsewhere, and I was a little concerned about what to do, but in the end decided to just stick where we were, and it turned out to be a good choice. On the day of the eclipse, we woke up, it was cloudy, but as the morning went on, there were big patches of blue sky. The clouds broke up to some degree. First contact in our area was about 12:20 something p.m. And about, I'd say, 5 minutes before the totality, we got socked in with clouds, and I thought, oh, here we go, we're going to miss it. But amazingly, within, I'd say, 30 seconds of totality, the clouds started dissipating a bit, enough to see the totally eclipsed sun. And as time went on, the conditions improved slightly, and we were able to basically see the whole event, which was 4 minutes and 24 seconds from Copperas Cove. So I used the C Star, like a bunch of other people. I was concerned because I had gotten it at the end of 2023 in December, and we had a lot of clouds, and I didn't really practice on the sun very much with it before the eclipse, but it all worked. The leveling and the setting up was smooth. Managing the solar filter went well, and like I say, the only big thing was the concern over clouds. So, Rich, if you can go to my 2 images, I just picked the couple of the better ones. So the surprising thing to me was the naked eye prominence down there at the 5:30, 6 o'clock position. that was an unexpected treat. And then the other one about 3 o'clock. And then the middle one was totality, obviously, and then the third one is my attempt at the diamond ring, as right after I took off was taking off the solar filter as totality was ending, or putting it back on. So that's all I have to say. Just glad that we got to see it. It was my third eclipse, long drive there, and then it was 3 weeks in the RV back, hitting national parks and monuments in the Southwest there. So it was a good trip overall.
Thank you, Joe. A quick question while we still have time from another Sea Star guy. These were individual snapshots using the app?
Yes, yeah, I was
Okay.
just taking saving images as we went.
Because they are better than the ones that I grabbed out of the video when I did it. So interesting.
Yeah, I kind of screwed up. I meant to take a video, and either operator error or not being familiar with the Sea Star operation, the video didn't save, or it could be very possible, although I won't admit to it, that I didn't press the record button.
Okay. Moving right along, Nicole, you're up. You're going to make it.
Perfect. Thank you, Rich. So yeah, let me first start by thanking you, Rich, for putting together this event. It's really hard to kind of collate the content across different presenters and to give a structure to it. So really appreciate all the efforts. So thank you. And it's an absolute joy to listen to all the Eclipse experiences so far. It's such a magnificent spectacle. You know, especially in this time, it was nothing short of a Bollywood movie. It had all the elements of it: surprise, anxiety, climax, and a bit of villainy. In our case, I'll talk a bit about that. And yeah, I think the only thing missing was a bit of song and dance. So yeah, this was my fourth total solar eclipse. A couple of them I'd seen from India, and the last one was 2017, and this one was my fourth. And I'd also seen a couple of and photographed a couple of annular solar eclipses. So in terms of equipment, you know, I think the mirrorless. I'm sorry, this happens to be a noise that I'm getting. Just 1 second.
You sound good.
Oh, okay. I guess there was some noise outside my apartment. Okay, so in terms of equipment, it looks like you know, the mirrorless happens to be the theme. So I used a Canon R6 with a telephoto lens. It was a similar setup that I'd used earlier as well, a 500 millimeters telephoto with a 1.4x teleconverter, giving me an effective 728 millimeters focal length. For the filter, I used the Thousand Oaks film. I've used it in the past. There are two variants to this. One is a visual film, and one is a photographic special, specific to for photography, which has a bit higher resolution. I prefer that. Given the weather conditions, I wasn't sure whether to get a tracking mount or not, so I decided to just keep it very simple and go with a standard tripod, not to complicate things at all. So, and that really worked. It has worked for me in the past, so you know, I was pretty comfortable photographing with it. So what really worked was sticking to the plan. Like Joe mentioned, I was just 15 minutes, 20 minutes away from Joe. We'd initially thought if we could catch up, but you know, we decided not to, given all the, you know, driving uncertainties, etc. But we kind of decided to stick to the plan. There was thing about the weather uncertainty, etc. But we said, let's stick to the plan and you know, view it from the place that we had initially decided to, which actually really worked. In fact, unfortunate for some people that the weather really played spoil sport. For us, actually, it was the weather that helped us see the eclipse in the first place. And a small thing about that was we had booked the hotel about 2 years in advance, and only to reach Klein, Texas, to figure out that the hotel had, you know, lost our reservations. So had it not been for the weather and, you know, all the apocalyptic conditions that were predicted in Texas, we possibly wouldn't have gotten a reservation at all. So I would say thanks to the weather that we actually got a chance to see it in the first place. So just for the eclipse, I saw it with my wife and my in-laws, who traveled all the way from India specifically to see the eclipse. So without further ado, if you could go to the next slide, please. Here are a couple of images. We got completely socked out for the first 2 minutes of the totality, nothing. We had absolute zero visibility. And then the sun just punched through midway. Luckily, we had 4 minutes of it. So just halfway through, the sun just punched through, and it was the most gorgeous, spectacle that we got to see. In fact, like, I think Richie commented, the bit of clouds added to the drama as the corona kind of, simmered through those, through those clouds. It was just beautiful. And one of that key features was that hot prominence that was easily visible to the naked eye. And we also had a 15x70 binocular that was set up for visual observation, and it was magnificent in that, binocular view. For the next slide, please. And again, thanks to the weather, I think we got a really dramatic view of the Bailey's beads and the diamond ring as it punched through the, the third contact and beyond. It just, as the sun emerged and with those all clouds, etc., it had this beautiful prismatic effect that I think without the clouds, we just wouldn't have been able to see it. So again, in our case, I would say thanks to the weather, we really got a chance to view the eclipse in a very unique way that I don't think we'll ever see it again in this fashion. So it was all for the good. And finally, to the last slide, please. That's the happy party. We saw it from the Motel 6 parking lot. It had a lovely lawn in front of it. So from where we viewed the eclipse, that's yours truly on the extreme right, my wife in the middle, and her parents on either side. And yeah, with all that anxiety and the uncertainty of the weather, we are really glad and really happy that we were able to see it, especially for my in-laws who came and traveled all the way from India to see it. So really happy about that. Yep, so that's all from my side. Thank you.
Great stuff, Nickel. The picture of the diamond ring with the clouds around it is very artistic. Serendipitous, but great, Okay.
Yeah.
Mary Ann, go for it.
Yes, and here I am. My first eclipse ever was in 1979 in Wolf Point, Montana. I was newly pregnant and just walked outside of my apartment and looked up and saw it. There were a couple of neighbors around, but it was very hushed and awe-inspiring. But not until the 2017 Madras eclipse, when I camped with some of our SJAA folks, and immediately when it was done, I thought, when's the next one? 7 years away. And immediately under the center line of totality are my in-laws. I have 7 years to cajole my way into staying with them for the big eclipse. And it happened. And luckily, my daughter came down from Boston with my 9-year-old grandson, 5-year-old granddaughter, and her husband, who is quite the birder and has a gorgeous Swarovski spotting scope. And so the day before the eclipse, the sun was clear up in the sky, and we decided we wanted to set up our equipment and give everyone a good look at the sun just in case the clouds would come in the next day. So we had a good dry run for setting everything up, seeing that things went well. I had hard framed eclipse glasses for everybody. I had my Celestron Smart Eclipse binoculars and my BT. And he had all the proper filters for his, he had a DSLR and his spotting scope and several other binoculars. So we got the 9-year-old grandson used to looking through everything. And I made sure that the next day he was at the BT so he could see the Bailey's beads and the diamond ring. But I think he was most thrilled by using a Cheez-It to see the eclipse shadow. And sure enough, yes, a little Cheez-It cracker works perfectly to see an eclipse shadow. So it was the first time for everyone there except myself and my husband to see a total solar eclipse. And my daughter had not been that excited about it until the day before when we set up all our equipment. And then as it was happening, she was just stunned and so happy to be there. So despite the cloud anxiety, we had great viewing. There were some high cirrus clouds, but just covered the sun a couple times during the whole event. Afterwards, we packed up our equipment and I did a planet walk with my grandchildren where we set the ball for the sun in the center where we had been observing. And then we walked out 3 giant steps as 1 astronomical unit. We placed the Earth. And then we walked way out to the barn through the gorgeous Texas bluebonnets and all the wildflowers that were popping up in Texas at that time. And we got out to Pluto and then kind of thought, how far out would the Oort cloud be? That would be pretty much past Waco at that time. So we had a really good time. It took us 4 days to drive home. I was so looking forward to a road trip, and now I'm done with a road trip. And let's see what slides I have there.
I'm sorry, Marianne, you just can't skip the broken arm. What's up with that?
Oh my goodness. That was the night before the eclipse. My husband tried an e-bike for the first time and couldn't make the turn and it fell over and we ended up in emergency care. So I had to drive all 4 days home from Texas and he's doing much better now, I must say. So that was the broken arm.
Yeah.
And so in the slides, oh, there's the Cheez-It in action. And then my daughter setting out papers to catch the shadows from the tree leaves.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. And there's my son-in-law. He had his DSLR. And if you blow it up, you can very clearly see that gorgeous prominence right there about 5:30-ish. Yeah.
Once again, the clouds are enhancing the corona.
Yes, they are. I must say in 2017, the corona was very, it was full of character. I found this one not quite the same, but still very, very special.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for me.
Sorry about the broken arm. Other than that, it sounds like a great trip.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, Don, you're up.
Yep,
there?
I'm here.
Okay, go for it.
All right. Well, let's see. I went to a town just north of Dallas. And actually it was one of my colleagues at where I work at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. She moved to Dallas about a year ago and works remotely. And she just happened to pick a house that was underneath the eclipse path. So I booked my flights exactly 6 months in advance when Southwest Airlines opened up their website for reservations. And we went to her place and basically used her back driveway for all of our pictures. And I brought my Takahashi 106 millimeter with my super lightweight old-fashioned Takahashi P2Z mount, which I modified with a long pole and that I attach a much smaller counterweight onto. This was done because some of the places they limit your luggage severely, like when we went to Svalbard or to Antarctica. So I've just used it for all of my eclipses since then. This eclipse I used for the first time a full frame camera, an EOS R5. And I left my my half frame camera at home because I was trying to minimize the amount of complexity. I already had 2 cameras and binoculars with me, and I just wanted to try to make sure I didn't overwhelm myself. And I tried this year a new approach. I used a program called Capture Eclipse, which was written by Rob Haley, I believe it was. Holly, I think, over here in Almaden. And in previous times, I used a shutter release, and then I had programmed my Canon camera with 3 sets of bracketed images, and then I would twist it when, second contact was finished. And then when third contact came, I would twist it to a different position. But by using this program, I could achieve the whole thing without having to, which would then allow me to use my binoculars and look at the prominences directly, which was actually quite spectacular. let's see. So I guess we can go to the next picture or next slide. So there's a picture of my mount, and you can see the long pole there that stretches right up into the bottom of the where the counterweight is attached. And then on the right is a small piece of the video I took on my second camera. And
see the birds going past.
oh, it looks like you trimmed the yeah. So it was I had sent Rich a lot of slides that overwhelmed his computer, and so we had to cut back quite a bit. I guess because of the computer limitations, but birds are known to migrate through Texas in April and early May, and they usually migrate at night. And so it was interesting to see that some birds decided that it was time to start their migration north because it was cool and evening now, but it really wasn't. And they happened to fly right through our our view of the eclipse. So that was quite interesting thing to capture. Another thing you can see in this, oops, go back please, is you can see little specks, and I have them marked in another one, but Jupiter is that little white speck that you got right there. That's Jupiter, and to the left of that is Aldebaran, and then up above, just on the edge of the frame, is Algol. And then Venus is actually off to the far right. Yeah, it's in this particular set of pictures, it's blocked by a cloud, but it's visible during part of the eclipse, not in this set of pictures. So yeah, there were planets to be seen. Next slide, please. So the left one is a GIF. The right one was a GIF, but it was too many megabytes. A GIF, I guess, is. And so basically by using this program, I was able to take pictures very carefully synchronized to the local time. And it would put the camera in burst mode just seconds before second contact. And so I was able to get a sequence of high-res pictures and then made it into a GIF, which you can see on the left. And similarly on the right, that's also available in a GIF that I can share separately from this presentation. And then the next slide. Okay, so this is also that's my corona. I actually have a sequence here that also is a build. Not enough megabytes space though. So this is sort of the final image, which actually shows some clouds that you don't see in the other dozen or so images. And so the clouds actually kind of add a little bit of mystique to the whole thing, but yet the clouds are not too thick, so you can still see all the spikes coming out from the corona. And then on the right is all the prominences that are visible during the maximum eclipse. It's kind of a cool shot. And then my last one, this is actually my chromosphere slide. And I superimposed on there with a little bit of photoshopping a properly sized image of Earth to show and compare how big these prominences are compared to our own planet. I didn't actually take this picture from space towards Earth. It's a Photoshop in case somebody thought that for a second.
Thank you, Don. This is really good stuff. You did a great job. You're very brave, I think, to ship your telescope by air.
Yeah, I actually carry it on board, so it's my carry-on baggage.
Right. Hey, Kamal, are you here? Okay, I did not see him sign on. But so I'll narrate. So Kamal was in Plano, which is basically in the backyard of Dallas, and they had a great eclipse party at a friend's backyard. Kamal used a stellar view, another refractor, a doublet APO, 102 millimeters on an Althaus mount, and conventional Vader Astro Silver filter. What worked well was planning and they had a great group of friends. What you're gonna see in a minute is a video of an eclipse party. It's a fantastic party that they had. And it's only a 2-minute video, so I think we can go ahead and show it. They didn't have a backup plan, so that caused anxiety. So I will click this, which is a YouTube video with a, and as that, so we're gonna go. There is some music.
And what are the shadows? These shadows made up of? These shadows are made up of. These are leaf shadows. See, this is a tree. This tree's leaf shadows are being on the camera, and see so many crystals here.
Not yet, not yet.
Just let us
That's
know
the
when we get it.
prominence, that's the prominence.
Yeah, that's the prominent.
Yeah.
See, it's so dark here now.
You're looking at the prominence and the corona.
See, there is a star.
That's Venus.
Venus, oh, that's Venus.
That's Jupiter there.
Jupiter, see.
Just go up, they say, look.
Yeah, there is a star.
Yeah, towards Jupiter, there's a comet between Sun and Jupiter.
Yeah, they say that.
And Venus is on the right of.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is
Not in the video, but yeah, Venus.
Anyway, great video. I wish Kamal were here to provide, in addition to local color, but
So, Rich, I was in touch with Kamal when this was happening because we had canceled our reservation and we did not know where we were going. So
oh,
Hemant said, okay, my house is not ready. It's going renovation, but you're free to like camp out outside or in the bare rooms. So everybody who did not find a reservation, friends of friends, they all landed up there.
wonderful. Thank you. Okay, I think that, hold on. All right, we got out of Texas. Next up is Arkansas and then Illinois and then Ontario. Sean, are you here available?
Yeah, I'm here. So this is my first time chasing or watching the total solar eclipse. I combined my personal plan to Houston and then also this trip. At the beginning, I thought I'm going to shoot the total eclipse around Austin area, but turned out to be the weather doesn't look great. So I made my last minute plan change and then drove from Houston all the way to Dallas. And then turned out in the morning time, there was very thick cloud. So I changed my plan last minute again, drove all the way from Dallas to Arkansas around the Hot Spring National Park area. But the time is pretty tight for me. So I ended up stop at a hybrid turnout around that area and then set up my equipment. I'm using a Canon R6 with a 800 millimeter RF lens, very portable, and then I'm just using a tripod to set it up. So every time I have to manually adjust the position of the camera to make sure the sun is always in the center of the field of view. I also use a self-made filter with better film. I thought it's going to affect my image quality, but turned out to be it's working pretty well. I think it's just with this very easy and quick setup, I can just drove around and then find a spot to really watch and enjoy the total eclipse. And then some challenges are when it happens, there's still a very thin layer of clouds passing by continuously during the whole session. So it kind of mess up the image a little bit. And then I was trying to bring down more details on the outer corona part. So that's why I take pictures at different exposure time, but I didn't really plan it well. And yeah, if you can go to the next slide. Like the rightmost image was a HDR composition of my different exposure time, but clearly you can see some steps there. But to me, I think that's the best I can get based on the photo processing. As you can see a little bit of the shape of the moon. And then on the leftmost is the Bailey Spitz, where I saw two, which is a phenomenon. And then during the total eclipse, and I can also see Jupiter, Venus, and also using my binocular to see the prominence, which is really astonishing to me.
Yeah, that naked eye prominence is wonderful. Yeah. So how long did it take you to drive there and back?
It's about like a total of like 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So Carl, are you around? Also in Arkansas?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go for it.
Cool. All right. So I, like Sean and some others, decided to change my plans of originally going to Texas. We had gotten a campground in December. We reserved it in the near Austin, just outside of Austin, at Llano. But then, as on the same text thread as Joe F. mentioned earlier, and yeah, we were talking about the weather and all this stuff. So we decided to, since we had the flexibility, we were driving in a rented RV with my wife and our 2 dogs. We made the call when we were in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to go to Arkansas instead. And we just found kind of a private campground just on an app in the path of totality, kind of near Little Rock. We were able to get there and set up with no problems, and we were in this giant empty field pretty much to ourselves. The weather was great. We had some clouds threatening in the beginning of the morning up there, but they passed. We had planes flying over, leaving their plane cloud trails, and I was kind of worried that those would get in the way. But of course they didn't, and everything was great for totality. I had brought, so what worked well, I kept it simple. I do astrophotography, but I didn't want to get bogged down in technicalities. I heard a lot of advice to, just watch the solar eclipse, and many stories of people missing a lot of it, futzing with their camera. So I just had DSLR and a tripod, and I had some homemade binoculars as well, which was a really fun project that I did just for the eclipse. Binoculars with solar filters that are removable. So I was able to get a really amazing view of totality, like some others had mentioned through the binoculars. It was astounding. They're equivalent to maybe 10 by 50 binoculars. But just looking at the totality through them, it looked like the sun was on fire, or the moon, I guess, was on fire. It was amazing. We had one other group next to us in the campsite who were doing astrophotography, and we're like, we're shouting at each other, like, look at the prominences, look at the prominences. And I told them to come over quick because the view was just so good through binoculars, and they all got to see that. I was really happy to share that with them. They said it was the highlight of the eclipse for them. So very proud of that. I also got some images. I guess maybe you want to flip to the next slide. So this was my setup. I also have a homemade solar filter using the Botter solar film. I 3D printed an enclosure for it that screws onto my Nikon DSLR, and glued it all together. And I also made a little solar finder, which I love the solar finder. It's so stupid simple, just a little dot that projects the sun when you're aligned with it. It projects the sun's bright spot onto the back, and then boom, you're aligned. Next slide, please. And then these are the images that I wound up with. Like Sean, I also had a tripod, so I was manually adjusting the position of the camera throughout the partial phases. You can very clearly see the clusters of sunspots through the camera, and of course through the binoculars as well. And then on the right is my composite image. I, like others, took bracketed exposures during the eclipse to try to get the prominences as well as the corona and its detail. I did a similar stacking method that I think Joe Lynn mentioned at the top, where you do this radial blur and kind of bring out some detail in the corona. My first time doing it, so I just kind of did it to my own taste, and I'm really happy with how everything turned out. The only thing that went slightly wrong is that I got slightly out of focus during the partial phases, and so my prominences were not as sharp as I would like them. But given it was my first ever solar eclipse, I checked all the boxes. I got great pictures, and I saw 90% of it with my eyes. I was really happy with the whole thing.
Cool. Your homemade solar finder, did you 3D print that?
Yep, I just drew it up in a little CAD program and 3D printed it, and luckily it's a pretty simple shape. It worked out great.
You might want to make that available to the club, because that sounds like a pretty handy thing that we could make.
Yeah, definitely. I was gonna put it in the ephemeris, but it didn't work out. So I'll send out an email with all that stuff for sure.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
Next up is Tan.
Okay, so everybody can hear me?
Yeah, you can hear me.
Okay. Yeah, so we started our journey on Thursday, just 4 days before the eclipse. And we had an Airbnb in near Klein, Texas, which had like 3 minutes of totality. And it had a last cancellation date of April 5th, the night of April 5th. So we started on the 4th, and the clouds it was like a lot of uncertainty in the clouds. So I scouted hotels like Motel 6, Super 8s, all the way from Maine to Arkansas, and booked like 4 different places, all with cancellation dates between 5th and 6th of April. And we are like, worst case, we are driving to Maine, even if you have to drive like 24 hours, like my wife and me on the wheel. And our daughter was excited. She's like, let's go to the East Coast. But thankfully we didn't have to do that. As April 5th rolled on by, we canceled everything and just kept our booking in Arkansas. We drove, it was our RV park at Horseshoe Bend. We reached there. We actually got a cabin there for a decent price. Like, I think it was $400 for 2 nights, which is like, I think, one of the cheapest places you could find for the time of eclipse. So we set up the camera in the morning. I hadn't done much practice, and I did have a QHY 268C, but I decided that I'm not going to mess with any astro cameras and focusing and stuff. The good thing with mirrorless and point and shoot cameras is that they have a screen and you can see the focus and everything. So we just used these, and we had a cheap solar finder. I put it on my Vixen R200 SS and located the sun in the morning, and everything was going well. I could focus very well. And the thing is, I don't really have any Bailey's bead pics because it was so exciting. My daughter was jumping up and down. I did not spend too much time near the camera, just, push the shutter all the way and let it do its thing. Equipment issues were that my camera sensor was very dirty. I did not realize it. I only went post-processing. I had to do a lot of cloning. And the other thing was I got really nasty flares, which you can actually see in the pictures. I cloned out whatever I could, but the flares were nasty. But the whole eclipse experience was amazing. We had some high clouds in the morning till about 10 a.m., 11 a.m., but they all dissipated, and we had like really clear blue skies. I also set up a 360-degree camera on the top of the truck, and it was rolling all the time. And so I have like a 1.5 to 1 hour of video, which I need to speed up and process. I'll post a link once I'm done with that. But overall, it was quite a nice trip. And on the way back, we got to see all the national parks, go to White Sands, go to Colorado, go to Utah, and kind of like drive back to Wakes and see everything from Arkansas to California all the way where we drove through. It was quite a nice trip. It was quite an experience. Our second eclipse, our daughter's first, she's 8. She was 3 during the first one and not with us. She was in India with her grandparents for a couple of months. So we drove to Idaho, and this one was with her. And it was watching her get excited was such an experience. She's jumping up and down, and she was like, never seen something like this. It was quite a wonderful experience. We can go over to the pictures now. Yeah, so these were the ones with the Sony camera. You can see the upper image is actually a bit rotated because I had to get rid of the flare out of the frame. In the left image, you can see a bit of a flare peeking out from the left. So these prominences were really, really visible. And you can see the corona, and the sun was really active. I think these are the same ones which gave us such a wonderful aurora. Gets a couple of weeks back. Okay.
Yeah, your camera is rotated because that prominence is usually around 6 o'clock in most people's images, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Okay. And it was a Newtonian, right? Everything's upside down. Yes. I guess there's one more slide. Yeah, so this is with the point and shoot camera to get the corona. So these were on a tripod. This was not on the mount. The other camera was on an iOptron Gem 45 mount. This one was just a tripod. I just picked it up and just pressed the shutter with auto mode and did bracketing and expected the camera to do something with it. And I'm glad I got some good images. I also have a wide field image with the same camera on the next screen probably. Yeah, so this one is the wide field. So you can see Jupiter and Venus, and the sky was quite dark to the naked eye. Especially you can see the clouds so far away, like where we were, like there was absolutely no clouds, like clear skies, and you could see the stars, and that's always a great experience. In 2017, also seeing stars in the eclipse and it's getting like totally dark, it's just like quite amazing.
Well, great picture.
I think this is the last one.
All right, thank you, Tim. Yeah. All right, the next person up is me. Okay, let me set the timer for myself. Okay, so I saw the eclipse from Illinois, and the reason I chose that was I grew up in central Illinois, in Champaign-Urbana, where the University of Illinois is. It's about 2.5 hours by driving north of Carbondale. So I sort of made a combination trip to visit friends in Champaign-Urbana and go down to the Carbondale area. We ended up in Benton, which is just north of Carbondale, because we were driving down and we decided to pull off in Benton to strategize where exactly we were going to watch the eclipse from. We might have wanted to try to find a winery, and then we ended up pulling into a McDonald's parking lot and realized this is the ideal spot because there were some trees, there was grass, and there was a nice hardscape to mount the telescope on. And so we decided to just stay there. And I think we lost 6 seconds of totality versus Carbondale. So it was like 4 minutes and 8 seconds versus 4:16 or something like that. I had a C-Star, which is a 50mm refractor, smart telescope. And what worked well was setting up and running the C-Star. I had a great phone app called Eclipse Timer, and it works on it measures where you are by GPS and gives you the times and alarms for all the various contacts. So I used that to manage my solar filter, because with the C-Star, you have to have a solar filter on to see the sun, but then you have to pull it off to see the eclipse, because or else it'll just be black. And what I ended up doing, because my filter was on pretty tight, was I filed it down with some 400 grit sandpaper, so it was a loose fit, and tied a thread to it, so that when the totality happened, I just pulled on the thread and the Eclipse solar filter came out, and that actually worked really well. And in terms of challenges, this was the most unusual trip because nothing went wrong. Usually everybody's observing session, something goes wrong, you have to fix it on the fly, and nothing like that happened. And that applies to the whole trip. My hosts were very gracious. They had a house in the country, saw all my friends. We had a great trip with my friend Chris down to see the eclipse and back. It was his first eclipse, my second. And with that, I'll show some pictures. On the left, there is a bonus picture of Comet 12P Pons Brooks, which I shot from my friend's house who lived in the country, not during the eclipse. This is something you never get from the Bay Area because the comet was very low. They live out in the country and it's born with 4. I think it was probably about 14 or 15 degrees above the horizon, but I got a good comet image. In the center is our setup. The sea star is on the pad to the right. And I don't know if you can see, but here is at the base of this large pillar, I set up my my pad tablet, which has running the Sea Star app. And that was popular among the other people. There were 40 or 50 people around. They would walk up and take pictures of the tablet screen. And on the right is me and my friend Chris ready to watch the eclipse. Okay, here on this page, the left hand is a video I took. I set the Sea Star to shoot automatic mode 1 frame per second from roughly 10 minutes before the eclipse to 10 minutes after. And however, I'd edited the video to slow it down to half speed during the eclipse, or else it'd be pretty short. And finally, I just started it. I tried to image stabilize it, but I just used some online servers that did not work very well. I assume the flickering of the corona is just varying exposure of the individual frames and not actual motion. So that was my video. It worked pretty well. However, being everything on automatic, you didn't have the option of tuning exposure and f-swap and everything to optimize for the different conditions. So the actual images are more crude, but for very little effort, I got an eclipse video. And on the right, that's the frame grab from the video. The best one I saw, the diamond ring, and the one in which the prominence was most visible. Yeah, I didn't have a burst mode available, so I couldn't shoot like 30 frames per second right at the various contact areas. However, I'm happy with what I did, and overall it was just a great trip to go back home where I grew up and to see my friends. Okay, next up and last but not least is Sandy. Take it away, please.
Hi, thank you, Rich. Okay, it was great to hear everybody's experiences. My husband and I decided to go to Niagara Falls. That was in the path of totality, and the duration of the eclipse was supposed to be like about 4 minutes, starting at 3:18 Eastern time. And we had made these reservations almost 8 months before. And, we had a nice hotel by the falls. And as it got closer, we started looking at the weather forecast and consistently kept saying it is going to be overcast. It's going to be cloudy. But we did not change our plans. We just stuck with it. And we flew to Ontario and then drove to Niagara Falls. And the hotel we stayed in, it was a Marriott, and they had set up the parking lot. One of the parking lots was set up with all kinds of nice tables and refreshments, photo booths, and a number of people had gathered there. I had taken my Sea Star with me. This was like a brand new, a piece of equipment I received as a gift over the holidays. So I just got it in December. I practiced a little bit before the eclipse, so I knew how to calibrate and how to level it. We were all ready and all of us had gathered. But the day of the eclipse, the sky was pretty overcast. But we were still very hopeful that, something would happen. So we went up there with the Sea Star all ready to go with the filter installed. And of course, we had our iPhone handy just in case. So what worked well was that there was a lot of drama with whether or not the clouds are going to part, whether we're going to be able to see anything at all. But the clouds were fast moving, and we were able to catch the key moments of the eclipse. Although the Sea Star decided it could no longer find the sun. Okay, so it just completely said unable to locate. So we had to resort to the iPhone, and my husband did a great job tracking the sun and the clouds with his iPhone. This was our first eclipse, first experience of totality. It was quite magical, even though we don't have all these fancy pictures. It was still very it was very primal, I suppose, how dark it became and all the parking lot lights came on. That was a little bit of a distraction. But the cheers and the applause of people that were gathered around, it was all very exciting. And what an interesting coincidence just around me, there were several people from the Bay Area. There was a dentist from Los Gatos. There was a couple from Saratoga, that's where I am from, and an engineer from Mountain View. So we were all just commiserating on the clouds. And the city of Niagara had declared a state of emergency. They were well prepared with the crowd surge. And the crowds did surge as expected, but maybe not as much. So overall, I think it was a good experience, even though the clouds could have cooperated with us a little bit better. And the challenges was as luck would have it, after the eclipse was over, it became bright blue sky and the sun came out. So that was a little bit of an irony there, but I still think we got a good taste of the eclipse, and we experienced it well with our own eyes. So if we go to the next few pictures. Okay, so here this is the a video of the birds that were flying. Actually, a lot of birds took flight on cue, and you can see how overcast the sky was. And then the next video shows the totality. You can see how the clouds gave it an impression that the sun was moving very fast. So it was pretty good. We were quite happy. We got to see the sun through that little parting in the clouds. And then to the roar of all the people that were gathered around. So that was great. And the last shot is just the picture of Niagara Falls. That was the view we had from our room. So overall, I think it was a great experience. And I would certainly look forward to the next one and pray for better weather.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sandy. Seeing the eclipse with some crowds is really cool. Just to have the crowd reaction amplifies it.
Yes.
On my trip, we decided not to do it, but Carbondale is where Southern Illinois University is. And they opened up the football stadium to all the students. And so there were like 30,000 people watching the eclipse at the same time. That must have been quite an experience. But
yeah,
I'll have to look for a video of it. So thank you so much. I'm sorry you didn't get better weather, but it was a cool experience.
Yep, it was. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody for keeping on time. And I'll show you some information I gathered from everybody. So it looks like the clear winner in popularity were Canon DSLRs, of which there were 5. There were 2 Nikon DSLRs. There are 2 Sea Stars. I'm counting Sandy's as a half of one because she took it but didn't get to use it. 1 Sony DSLR, 1 Sony point and shoot. one Daystar Quark, and multiple cell phones. I counted at least 3, but I think there are more. In terms of actual optical equipment, oh, by the way, this doesn't add up to 14 because people have multiples and some people use other things at the same time. There were 7.5 refractors, 2.5 which were Takahashi, 2 of which were Takahashis, 2.5 were C-stars. A C-star counts as both imaging and optics. More than 5 people used telephoto lenses with their DSLRs. There was 1 reflector, and everybody used their old-fashioned eyeball. So that's the collection of equipment. I'd like to thank everybody, and not least for staying to about 5 minutes each, so we stopped with plenty of time, so we can entertain questions. And I have one if nobody else does. Anybody have questions for any of the presenters? Okay, well, my question is for those of you with the DSLRs who did these great images combining the corona, the prominences, and the totality. You know, if you guys could send out an email with your processing algorithm for blending the pictures and how that was done, I would appreciate that if I ever go to another eclipse and use a DSLR. That was really good. Like I think Dave and some other people have ones like that. Tan, yeah. If you could,
there's a few really good videos out there.
Yeah. Oh, YouTube videos on doing that?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I pretty much did not do any kind of stacking. So all these are single exposures. So it was just adjusting the sliders in Lightroom. That's what I did. And cloning away the dust spots. So I haven't really done any kind of stacking. The only thing what I did was I had no idea what should be the exposure duration. So I had a homemade aperture mask where I took a black sheet and drilled a hole in it. That was an aperture mask. So I had no idea what was the exposure. So I set the camera on auto and asked it to take 9 exposures from +3 to -3 stops. And then I just picked up whatever I could.
So in the 2017 eclipse, I had a DSLR, and I have a friend who was an astronomy professor. We were astronomy nerds as kids, and he went into it. And so his recommendation was at the full moon before the eclipse, take your DSLR out and shoot the full moon. The exposure for totality will be very similar to full moon, and you experiment with manual focus, because with DSLRs and telephoto lenses, you would think infinity is all the way out, but it almost always is all the way out and then back 1 or 2 millimeters for focus.
Yeah, I read about that, and the full moon was cloudy in San Jose.
I'd like to add to that.
Sure.
So the exposure time for your camera actually spans the whole gamut. Some of my pictures are at 1/8,000th of a second, all the way down to 1/30th of a second. And it depends on what you want to take and at what time. So the high speed exposures were taken, you know, like right at second and third contacts, so that you could actually see the prominences without all of the corona.
Right.
And then slower exposures are to get more of the corona and maybe a reflection of the moon, of the earth shine on the moon. So there's a whole gamut of exposures. And so if you're going to try to bracket it, you really need to do what I did in previous eclipses, where you set up multiple brackets, which you can do with these Canon cameras.
Yeah.
So, or a computer program.
Yeah, I highly recommend automating as much as possible. I mean, I clicked one button, would occasionally, tweak focus, but for the most part, I was looking up, especially during totality. And again, Eclipse Orchestrator and Solar Eclipse Maestro, and I think Capture Eclipse was someone would use that. Those are all great programs. You need to practice. And then also add that Fred Espenek, Mr. Eclipse, quote unquote, has a number of pages on his website kind of explaining or stating here's what the exposure should be at this point in time. So if you don't have the opportunity to experiment, at least you can go off of his charts.
The other trick that I've learned by trial and error is that as the eclipse kicks in, I've measured the temperature drop and it's consistently around 13 to 15 degree drop.
Yeah.
And the focus has consistently changed ever so slightly on
Interesting.
all the eclipses. And so, right, maybe 5 or 10 minutes before totality, you can use the sunspots to get your initial focus, but the sunspots get blocked when you get close to totality. But it turns out right before totality, you've got a perfect crescent. And if you go and look at the point of the crescent, you can get a really good sharp focus by using that. And it's consistent. Every eclipse I've been to, I'll go, and sure enough, it's ever so slightly out of focus, and I'll tweak it a little bit and it snaps right in. So that's another trick that I haven't seen mentioned or posted anywhere in the past.
As I said, this exercise for me, like a lot of stuff I see out of this club, amazes me at the technical capability of a lot of our people. It's just really great stuff.
I have one question as well. Like when we follow the tutorial to do the HDR composition of the outer corona, like I saw some defects to perfectly align all the flares and also the corona at the same time. Do you see the same issue, or you can align both the corona and the prominence perfectly?
For me, when I did it, I actually took obviously took as many exposures as I could during totality, and I wound up stacking them all. And so as part of that, I had to register or align them, and I used I forget what it is. There's a good process within PixInsight. Use that for anything else, to align all the subframes. So I had my 3 different exposure stacks all aligned to each other, and that I think made a big difference. Or if you just have your different exposures, they don't even have to be stacked, but you use a program, I think, to align them so that they're all kind of centered exactly in the same spot, and then combining them, it works just fine.
In my case, I didn't do any stacking at all, and it just so happens that some of the exposure times do get both the prominences and the corona. But if you get good images to start out with, it's amazing how good they can look without doing any work on them.
Yeah, I was working with thousands of images, frankly. And for example, the Bailey's Beads GIF had, I think I counted 59 frames. And I posted in the chat Nico Carver's tutorial on basic processing and how he recommends aligning and you import these images into, you have to use Photoshop, at least in his case, as a stack. So you have layers that you turn on and off and basically tweak pixel by pixel so that you've got things aligned as best as possible. And even though I've got a pretty accurate mount, the wind was wreaking havoc on things, and on a number of even pretty short exposures, I had like double stars and that kind of thing. So, but his tutorial really helped me recommend that.
Hey, I got a question. A couple people mentioned radial blurring. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Why would you blur anything?
It is weird. I cannot explain it. Again, the chart or the YouTube video that I just posted walks through it. You don't actually blur the image. You blur things, and that somehow, when you subtract it from the main image, it reveals structure that otherwise you wouldn't notice was there. Yeah, it's very non-intuitive, but you don't keep the blur. You subtract the blur from the main image and then blend things together further.
Oh, so is the idea that you're sort of blurring a circle, like the perimeter?
Yes, you have to. Actually, you're right. You have to center your shot of the sun and moon precisely, on the crosshairs in the center of the screen. and then you blur around that.
Oh, I wonder if what you're doing is getting rid of Newton rings or something like that. Anyway.
I
don't know. Yeah.
I think what you're doing is you're masking off the kind of background by doing that blur. And by masking that off, it highlights the spots that are sharper. That's my naive understanding.
It's magic. It works.
Okay, well, if that is everything, I'd like to thank everybody again for all the work they did and the amazing images and slices of life that they all shared with us. So everybody, and a hand for all the presenters.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this together, Rich. It was really amazing to see everything and all the data, and I loved seeing the map of everyone's location. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, pretty fun stories.
Yeah, these eclipses should come by more often, huh?
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody, for attending. Thank you so much, Rich, for pulling this together. And we'll see everybody next month.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.